In this video, we're going to talk about whether state legislatures can ignore the votes of millions of Americans and overturn the results of an election. So hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you stay educated on how your money works. As Americans discuss and often lament in every presidential election year, the US does not choose its president based on whichever candidate receives the largest number of votes in a national election, but via an electoral college system, which each of the individual states holds a separate election to elect a slate of electors who cast their votes for president. This unique approach means that sometimes, as happened in 2000 and again in 2016, the candidate who received the most votes nationwide does not ultimately win the overall election. When this phenomenon occurs, and sometimes even when it doesn't, partisans of the losing candidate start thinking about ways to game the electoral college system to install the preferred choice in the White House regardless. One example of this trend playing out in 2020 is when Donald Trump apparently lost both the popular and the electoral vote, yet he and many of his supporters claimed victory nevertheless and asserted claims without credible evidence that substantial election fraud had taken place. Some voices proclaimed that states in which Republicans control the state legislature should choose electors favoring Trump, no matter how the residents of those states may have voted. The scheme proposed here reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of how the US electoral college system and electoral law function. When the framers of the Constitution outlined the workings of the electoral college system, they didn't specify how presidential electors should or should not be chosen, leaving it up to the various state legislatures to each decide for themselves how to appoint their electors. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature therefore may direct a number of electors, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled to in the Congress. This passage meant that state legislatures could opt to choose electors themselves or appoint a commission to designate electors or hold a lottery or flip a coin or employ whatever other method they saw fit. However, it does not mean that state legislatures can simply ignore election results and choose whichever presidential electors they want. After the Constitution was ratified and went into effect in 1788, states generally used a combination of selections by legislatures and selections by popular vote for designating their electors. By 1864, though, every state had adopted laws establishing the practice of popular voting for electors. For the most part, each political party submits a list of electors who are pledged to vote for that party's candidate to state elections officials, and after the election, the state appoints the electors submitted by the party of whichever presidential candidate receives the most votes. Although the wording of Article 2 of the Constitution allows that any state legislatures could opt out for any different method of picking legislatures in the future, it does not empower any legislature to ignore both their state's election results and their existing laws, and willy-nilly designate whomever they want as electors. For example, Democratic legislators in Florida could not decline to recognize Donald Trump as the winner in that state's election and appoint electors chosen by the Democratic Party instead. Any state's legislature could theoretically pass a law setting out a new method for designating presidential electors other than the popular vote. However, they would have to enact such a law prior to Election Day. They could not retroactively change or just disregard their current law to defy the will of the voters. State election laws and regulations must be established and in place prior to Election Day. They cannot be improvised or instituted on an ad hoc basis after the fact. Otherwise, every presidential election would descend into chaos, with state legislatures controlled by one party refusing to appoint electors pledged to the other party's candidate. The legal theory that would allow state legislatures to go rogue and appoint electors without regard for the popular vote rests on an argument made by Chief Justice William Rehnquist in Bush v. Gore. On this view, a legislature is unconstrained in its power to set the manner by which electors are selected, meaning that even after an election, the legislature could ignore the results and select a different slate altogether. A recent opinion by Justice Brett Kavanaugh suggests that Rehnquist's argument may be again on the rise. But advocates for this view need to recognize that between Bush v. Gore and today, the Supreme Court has unanimously decided the presidential electors are not actually electors, but are instead bound to the people's vote. That principle that cabinets elector discretion must also constrain legislatures, at least if the country is to avoid an abomination that the framers expressly rejected. That said, the law is only relevant to the extent that it is enforceable. If Republican-dominated legislatures were determined to find excuses for ignoring their state's election results, a Republican-controlled Senate were willing to facilitate the scheme, and a conservative judiciary were compliant in upholding the results, then such a plot might indeed succeed. So what are your thoughts? Depending on the state you live in, should your state's legislature overturn the will of the people? Leave a comment down below and let's get a discussion started. And as always, take care of your money. Today's book of the day is Everyday Bias by Howard Ross. I'll leave a link to the book down below, and if you prefer listening to it on an audiobook for free, I'll also leave a link to a 30-day free trial to Audible. You can choose this book or any book to listen to, and even if you cancel before your free trial is over, you can still keep the book and listen to it whenever you want. Last thing before you go, a financial education is the most important kind of education you can give your kids. That's why I created Smart Money Parenting as a way to prepare you and your kids about the highs and lows of managing your own money. I'll leave a link to the course down below so you can check it out.